welcome back to my channel, Heart Connected Communication. And today in this video, we're going to look at a really important piece of nonviolent communication, and it's to help us with the skill of requests. And this is something that all of us can use to learn, not just to get what we want, but also to create a quality of connection that really helps us all thrive. So let's get to the heart of it. So today we're going to be looking at requests, which is the fourth part of the form of nonviolent communication. But I wanted to start with something first. I love this quote. It comes actually from a book called Connecting Across Differences by Dean Killian. And it's a quote from Joseph Wood Crutch that says, "Cats seem to go on the principle that it never does anyone harm to ask for what you want." So being that I have two cats, that makes sense to me. But it seems so simple to ask for what we want, but there's a lot that's involved in regards to requests. So I want to bring up the form again to give you something to look at and really get a sense of connection to why the form is there. So you can see here, this is what we've been concentrating on, sort of the core of nonviolent communication, where our intention is for connection. And a lot of people think, oh, that means connection, talking to another person, that connection only means talking or interacting with another person. But in this case, connection can mean many different things, many different ways to meet the need of connection. So our attention is on the present moment. So this is the form that, if you can see the earlier videos that I go over observations and feelings and needs, and observations versus evaluations, which is a more dominant culture way, sort of a power over way where we judge and make decisions that can often lead to violence in word, thought, or action. And feelings versus thoughts, and also on the continuum, needs versus strategy. Well, you can see here requests are this bottom part. And I like how the people who created this made requests into a triangle, and the way that it has a little curved part where the needs sit there. Because to me, that's a reminder that requests are based on needs. Because before we can go to requests, we really need to get it to the heart of the situation and to get all the needs up on the table. So I liked how this holds this for this part here. And requests can be requests to ourselves or requests to others. And I'll go into some aspects that might help you in forming requests. What seemingly easy is actually often difficult. So hopefully this will help you. And then we have this form is part of the connecting with myself and then expressing myself and receiving others. So, and for the motto with requests, we have requests versus demands. And where are we on that continuum, on all the various different things that might create more of a demand within us or receiving a demand. So one thing that I really appreciated learning about requests is that it's really an invitation for the other person to give you their honest response. We have such a culture of saying yes when we really don't want to say yes, or all the shoulds. And this is really getting connected to needs and what's really going to work. So I'm wanting to come to a request when I'm at the space where I'm understanding that needs are universal and someone else's or a group's needs are just as important as mine. And if I don't always have that sense, then I want to be aware of it. And to some extent, I want to be as open as I can, coming with curiosity when I have a request, that I'm not attached to the outcome. And remembering that needs are not connected to a person, place, or a thing. And so in NVC, or nonviolent communication, it's helpful to see that there's different kind of requests, because often in our culture, we go quickly to a problem, to a solution. We never get to the heart of it. We don't know what all the needs are, for one. And then even once we say maybe had a sense of needs, we go to an action. And these are some other requests that really was an aha moment for me. They check for understanding, that if I'm expressing, and I'd really like to know if my connection is getting through, if the quality of my connection is where I'm being understood for what's important to me, my feelings and my needs. So I might say, would you be willing to tell me what you hear me saying? Or I might say, do you feel me? Do you get it? Could I get a few things back so I have a sense of that we're on the same page? Or maybe you can just give me an essence of what you think is going on for me. I'm not sure I'm being clear. Or I'm worried that that's confusing, or I've used a lot of words. Could you just give me a sense of like the gist or summary of what you're getting? And you won't always get that in response. And you can keep saying, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm hearing this for you. And could you say like the few things that you heard that was important to me? And then I'll be able to take in what's going on for you. So check for understanding could be a request. Check for connection, in that maybe I have a sense of being heard in the way that I want to be heard, or that's good enough for now. Maybe I want to check in with the other person. Would you be willing to tell me what comes up for you after hearing that? Or I'd like to hear how you feel when you hear me saying this. I know it might be hard to express. I'd really like to know what's going on for you. Could you share your feelings? What's important to you about this? And then we have that movement between expression and empathy. And then, yes, of course, we do also want to make action or solution requests. We have particular things. Hey, I've got some ideas. Or an action could be, hey, could we brainstorm some ideas tomorrow at lunch, or whatever it might be? Can we come back to this and see if we've got any requests of each other? For right now, maybe the quality of connection is enough just to go from there. So I really appreciate those pieces. I think what's not listed here is a check in request, a consent. Those are huge pieces. I realize that I want to share a story. Are you willing to hear that now, or would you like me to continue working with you on what we were talking about, or whatever it is? Check in requests, consent requests. And I also want to bring in the 4 parts to a request, which can be really helpful, especially in hindsight or for preparing for a conversation, but even in the moment. Is it doable? Is the request doable in the present moment? And is it specific? And using positive language. I don't want to have any don't do this kind of ideas. And I don't want necessarily general things. We want to make a request the easiest it can be to say yes to. And so these are some things to consider. And in Marshall Rosenberg's book, Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Life, there's some examples and some little exercises about translating things. Often, if I'm in person, we'll all stand up, or we'll invite people to interact in the way that works for them. And we'll be in one kind of area, and I'll say something like, put up your hand, or move closer if you have a sense that the request I'm making you can actually do. And I might say something like, I want you to love me. Do you know exactly what I'm needing? And some people will come forward. Well, sure, you said you wanted love. I didn't say at all what that meant to me. So that might be a lot more confusing. So what if I said something like, would you be willing to tell me 2 things that you appreciate that maybe this week that I've done for you? Or 2 things you appreciate about me that has contributed to you? That might be more specific and doable. Or would you be willing to write them down and tell me next Saturday or whatever? Um, it's it's a piece of trying to make it a gift. A request is a gift because it can really meet needs when you're saying yes to a request. Now, another piece is, how do you tell the difference between a request and a demand? And we can think about it on a continuum in some ways. I just want to know where I am. Maybe I'm receiving an energy that's demand energy, even though that's not the way it's sent. Maybe I'm really attached to an outcome, and so it's coming across as a demand. So a request where I'm open to imagine all kinds of different ways that needs can be met. Maybe I'm willing to hear a no. And if I'm not willing to hear no, that's information for me. Now, I'm not wanting to slip into, oh, requests are good and demands are bad. Sometimes we have a high threshold request, or we even have a demand. Often it has to do with a sense of a safety, preserving life, emotional or physical safety. And so I just want to know that it's demand. I want to know why I'm attached to a certain outcome, and maybe I'll be able to express. I remember a time that my kids all wanted to go to a sleepover with all kind of gender there, mixed gender, and parents not necessarily in the vicinity, and they would be, up all night. So parents or adults would be asleep, and they were in their teens. And that was a pretty high threshold request that I am not wanting to support places where harm can come to you. I don't want to create environments where it's a possibility there's an increased risk. And I so want you to have fun and to be able to go. And I'm here feeling a pretty strong constriction about safety. And of course, that was really difficult. Everybody's going, you're the only parent. And what's funny is later I found out I said my no, tried to connect it to the needs, and I'm sure it was really hard to hear. Probably got received as a demand or that they didn't have much power in the situation. And later I found out, or they told me that nobody was able to say because all the parents had the same response. And so, in a sense, we were all, holding that with care. But I want to note that often when we have positions of power influence, like a parent has more access to resources, more influence, um, or I can, in a sense, have more control over the environment, then we want to be mindful of the requests we're making and how our power makes it more difficult to say a no when we have more access to resources, and how much more vulnerable it is to make a request when someone maybe has less access to resources. So it's bringing in some of the rank and power privilege status aspects to consider. And I did want to say one piece about demand also is that sometimes there is a demand to stop harm. It's like, stop, we're going to protect. So a protective use of force would be acting in for the needs of safety and for preservation of life or emotional or physical safety, protecting that and acting in the service of those needs. And as soon as possible, then reaching out for connection. And I'm going to use the least amount of force to protect, and then connect as soon as possible and get to the needs. So I'm hoping that's helpful, that there's a lot of nuance here, and it's complex as we people often are. I also want to bring in that often, probably all the time, underneath a request or connected with requests is a sense of mattering, that there is a vulnerability and a piece that's often connected and mixed in there, that if I mattered, you would say yes. So I'm wanting to invite that when we say a no to request, it can be really helpful to say, what are the needs you're saying yes to? And also honor that I'm really hearing these needs are important to you. And I'm so wanting to contribute to those, and this particular strategy or request, this is what I'm wanting to say yes to, and these are the needs that maybe aren't met for me. How can we come back and really connect to the needs that are there and think of many different strategies? So a practice that you can do is that if you're imagining a conversation ahead of time, you can write down multiple different strategies instead of just one, and that'll help ease up the attachment to a particular outcome. And you can also invite the other person into, like, I'm really attached to this, and I'm really wanting to come up with some different ideas. That might be something that you can look at together or ahead of time, or in hindsight, when you noticed you were really upset by a no, then what was it that you were longing for? And what are some various different strategies to be connected? Sometimes I have to mourn that that need isn't met. And also, it opens up, that morning can open up about other strategies of ways to connect to that need. Something else to highlight is the words, would you be willing? Because we're really not looking for compliance, we're wanting to look for willingness. And these words seem important because what they hold is that I'm caring for my needs and I'm caring for the person that I'm making the request of. I'm wanting to know if they're willing, because when people are connected to needs, they're so much more likely to want to contribute to needs. And when my kids, when I was first practicing this, I was, trying to memorize, would you be willing? So I would say it all the time. Would you be willing? Would you be willing to tell me when you would be able to do your homework? Or would you be willing to tell me when you'll be able to take the garbage out before Friday or whatever? And after a while, they were like, oh, why do you keep saying that? Would you be willing? It's so stupid. Or I'm so tired of that. It's weird. And I was reminded the way that Marshall had responded to his kids. So I responded, well, I can go back to yelling or demanding. And they're like, no, mommy, that's fine. Your words are okay. So some more practice might be for you to think of some situations where it's really challenging for you to make a request. You feel stuck, there's some constriction, there's worry or shoulds or thoughts, and that's something you might journal about or draw about or meditate on, or when you're taking a walk to see what emerges, looking at those situations and seeing what is it that you're saying, what needs are you protecting in a sense by not making a request. And then you can also look at situations where you really felt a no and you said yes. And what needs were you meeting by saying that yes? And what was the no connected to? What needs were, though, what needs was the no to the request connected to? And that can bring some insight where you can ponder. Role playing is a great way too, where you can imagine seeing what it feels like to make certain requests after you've received empathy or gotten some connection to the needs. Here's some other ideas for supporting connection towards a solution is once you have a sense of connection, you might want to have some kind of sense of moving towards an action that will support you both. You might use things like, I want to make this really work for both of us. Can you tell me your concerns about the strategy that I'm bringing up? And could you tell me what might not work about what I'm requesting? Can I tell you what's not working for what you're requesting? Or, like I said before, do you want to brainstorm to come up with solutions? Could you tell me if you're open to exploring other options to have this meet more needs and have this work out for all? Would you tell me if you imagine other solutions or strategies that would meet all of our needs? And then we're kind of joining together side by side and looking at the dilemma rather than having the dilemma sort of be in between. I think the biggest thing is when we come together and make requests, whether we're making them or receiving them, it's that sense of connection about the needs and that we all share them and then it matters. So even making requests is a way of connecting to mattering, or receiving some requests is that's a connection to someone that it matters what they're asking for. And it really helps us reach across differences and also have that sense of caring and making life more wonderful. As Marshall Rosenberg emphasized, really the underlying purpose of nonviolent communication, including making requests maybe instead of demands, it's really not to get our way, but it's to build a relationship based on empathy and honesty so that everyone's needs can be on the table, be equally valued and cared for, and that everyone's needs can be met. And sometimes, like I said, we need to mourn that needs aren't met, but there's equal care, and everyone's needs matter. Well, I hope you've got some ideas for practice and how this supports you in completing the nonviolent communication 4 parts of the form that supports the consciousness of interdependence and shared power and creating relationships in a world that really thrives. I'm excited to play with requests because they've always been something somewhat challenging for me. And I think for a lot of people, it was the part that I would come to the needs and I would be just kind of frozen, like, I don't even know what I need. So I want to really invite in a lot of gentleness about this because it's not the easiest thing. And I know even once we learn this, there's a sense that I should have a request. And that's part of our domination culture kind of coming in. It's okay to not be sure of a request or not have it actually be doable, but to be open to find something that's doable. So just have a lot of compassion for yourself as you practice this. And I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Thanks.
Where do you go when you can't? Where do you go when you can't sleep at night?